What is up, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are here for part number 3, the last part of the series of learning how to drive without the racing line. So let us get into it. Now, this is going to be a relatively short video as I'm just going to go through the track list that I personally followed as I was learning to drive without the racing line. So I'm going to give my suggestion as to the track order that you should follow. And then I'm also going to give an alternate list so that you can put some of the tracks, the newer tracks from this game ahead of the tracks that aren't used in real life or maybe aren't used as much in league racing. So I will get into the list. So following Bahrain, you are going to be going to, or my suggested list, I should say, is after Bahrain is Imola, then Spain, then Australia, then Azerbaijan, followed by Canada, then Britain, Austria, France, Hungary, Belgium, Netherlands, Monza, Singapore, Japan, Texas, Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, Jeddah, Miami, China, Portugal, Qatar, Vegas, and finally, Monaco. For my alternate list that you can follow as far as the track order, it would go as such. So it is Imola, then Spain, then Australia, Azerbaijan, Canada, Britain, Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Netherlands, Monza, Singapore, Japan, Texas, Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, Jeddah, Miami, Qatar, Vegas, France, China, Portugal, and lastly, again, Monaco. So as you are going through or progressing through the track order, or through the track list, I should say, I'll give you a general timeline of what should happen because as you go through the track list, the amount of time that you're going to be spending in time trial is going to get less and less. So when you get to Imola, instead of it being 3 weeks before you set a new record, it's more than likely going to be maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks. So when you get to Imola, you're going to follow the exact same thing that you did for Bahrain. And then instead of it taking 3 weeks for you to set a record or to lap consistently within 5/10 of the record you set with the racing line turned on, it's probably going to take you about a week and a half to 2 weeks. And then when you go into GP mode, it's probably going to take you maybe 3 to 4 days for you to be able to get used to driving around this track with the computer. Now, by the time you get to, I would say, Austria, you are going to probably set your time trial record with the racing line turned off in the first day that you start doing time trial at Austria. And then the other thing that's going to more than likely happen is that you're not going to need to turn the racing line on to do the initial 10 to 15 laps. What I would suggest though, so when you get to Imola, you can have the racing line turned on. However, something that you also can do is just completely leave the racing line turned off and try and get your braking points without the racing line turned on. So you can do it whichever way that you would like to go about doing it. It doesn't necessarily matter. I would maybe say by the time you get to the fourth track, which would be Australia, that would probably be where you don't need to turn the racing line on anymore for the initial 10 to 15 laps when you get into time trial, when you're starting to learn the track. So I would say, yeah, probably by Australia or the fourth track, that's where you won't need to turn the racing line on anymore. And then at Austria, you're going to probably set your record within the first day of driving there without the racing line. And then also, it's going to probably take just a few hours in GP mode for you to be able to drive against the computer without, crashing into them or causing any issues or anything like that. So this one was a relatively short video for part 3, just going through the list. Obviously, you don't have to follow the list if you don't want to, but that's the list that I particularly followed as I went through the journey of learning how to drive without the racing line. One of the other things that I want to say is that there can be some tracks that, let's say you get to the 3-month period and you want to start league racing. There may be some tracks that you do not know all too well, and that is completely fine. I would say when I got to mid-October, when I did my first league race and I just reserved for a race, there were a handful of tracks that I didn't know. So from the list, I would say I did not know Singapore, Texas. I'd probably say Mexico as well. Miami, I wasn't too good at. Qatar and Vegas weren't in F1 22, so I'll leave those ones out. Um, France, I didn't know too well. China, I didn't know too well. And Portugal, I didn't know too well. So there were a handful of tracks that I didn't know too well, and that's completely fine. You can start racing, I would say, when either after around 3 months or after you have around 12 to 15 tracks where them pretty well. So that would be my suggestion as far as that is concerned. Now, one thing that you may also ask is potentially providing track guides for each track. That's not something that I'm going to do. I'm not saying that you can't go to another YouTuber's channel and look at their track guides. You're more than welcome to do that. For me personally, though, I found that there was a lot of fulfillment in going about the process this way. It really was an authentic process as far as learning how to drive without the racing line. And even let's say for the 2 new tracks that just came out in F1 23, so Qatar and Vegas, I did not really drive on them until I would say the end of December. And I drove on Las Vegas. I actually watched one of Jarno Otmir's league racing videos, and he has done, I think, 3 league races at that circuit so far in the F1 23 game. So I watched one of his videos, and then I went onto the track, and just by visually watching his league racing video, I was able to navigate the track relatively well without even using a track guide. So just the visual of watching someone drive the track was good enough for me to be able to then hop on the game and drive it myself. And I got up to speed with the track within probably 10 to 15 laps, so relatively quickly. So, and I guess you could say that watching Jarno's video can be almost like a track guide. I guess you could say that, but I wasn't necessarily paying attention to like the breaking points and stuff like that. I was just watching the video for entertainment purposes, but visually I can see, or I could see what it is that he was doing and how he was maneuvering through the turns. And it's almost like I was able to take somewhat of a, I guess, a recording, photograph, recording, something like that. I was able to just go into the track and be able to drive it well, relatively well. So I'm not saying that using track guides from other YouTubers is a bad thing. You can do that if you want to. But for myself personally, I didn't want to do that, and I find that it's a lot more of an authentic experience going about it, doing it this way and without track guides. So that's just my opinion. You can go about doing the rest of the tracks or any new tracks as you please. So that is going to wrap up part 3 of learning to drive without the racing line. This is the last video of the series. So let me know how it is that this tutorial was, uh, how you found it, and if you found it helpful or beneficial. You can let me know. I hope that it is beneficial for you and that it helps you learn to be able to drive without the racing line, because driving without the racing line, it makes the racing 10 to 20 times better in comparison to driving with the racing line, because when you're driving with the racing line is driving for you. You're not actually doing the driving. So this is legitimate driving when you're driving without the racing line. So let me know how these tutorials were for you. Hopefully they help. I am Kema. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Um, yeah, subscribe to my channel. I do hopefully plan on doing league racing videos starting in February. Like the video as well, as that would help me out quite a bit. And then once again, you can share this video and the parts 1 and 2 with anybody else that you know may be wanting to learn how to drive without the racing line, or if you just found the video informative. I'd like to thank you for tuning into this part 3 and this entire series as a whole. And as usual, I'd like to say, take care.